Attorney Muriel Ducille says when Parliament set a mandatory minimum sentence for persons convicted of or who pleaded guilty to possession of dangerous drugs with the intent to supply back in 2011, it was in breach of the Constitution.
Any matter concerning sentence is a judicial function, not a matter for the legislature. And one has to keep in mind the whole theory of the separation of powers, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. For Parliament to set a mandatory minimum sentence, in essence, what Parliament has done is to set a sentence.
Mr. Ducille, who successfully challenged the constitutionality of the legislation, called the amendment, which orders a mandatory minimum 4-year prison sentence, oppressive and draconian. Senior Supreme Court Justice John Isaacs agreed and overturned the legislation, thereby returning judicial discretion on matters of sentencing to the magistrates.
Given the circumstances concerning the offender, because you don't only take into account the offense, but the offender. So that the offender is taken out of the equation. He may have been otherwise a very good person. Circumstances, whatever, may have caused him to stray. But it doesn't necessarily mean that given a chance, he would not stay on the narrow path.
This mandatory minimum sentence, Mr. Ducille says, also created a backlog in cases and has led to massive overcrowding of the prison.
Because some of the offenses, the discretion is taken away from the magistrate to grant bail. And you'd have persons who would end up in Foxhill because they pleaded guilty. They don't want to waste the court's time. So consequently, the prison population would continue to grow.
This new ruling has major implications for both the courts and persons currently sentenced to prison for this offense under that amended act.
In the circumstances where persons ought not to have been in prison. Some of them have been there for over a year, maybe 2 years. Given the time when the act was passed, the act was passed in 2011, almost 3 years. So some of them would have been, their sentence would almost be expired then, put it that way. So those persons, given the circumstances where they perhaps could have been given a bail or even 6 months imprisonment, would have been there for a longer period.